Hello everyone, welcome to J Mike's Missives on YouTube. I am J. Michael Moore, the Falcons blogger who is in desperate need of a haircut before the start of Falcons training camp. So thank you all for bearing with me. A little disheveled, but I got the feet on the counter, got the questions pulled up from Voices Heard on AtlantaFalcons.com, and I'm going to answer a few more fan questions as we move closer to Russell Falcons training camp, which begins August 1st here in Flowery Branch, Georgia. A couple reminders about Russell Falcons training camp. Have them pulled up on my screen right now. Fans, remember, All-State All-Access Weekend back again, August 7th and 8th. Brookwood High School for Friday Night Lights, and then Roam the Dome on August the 8th down at the Georgia Dome. You can go to AtlantaFalcons.com for all your info on that. Now, I know most of you probably aren't in the Atlanta area and can't attend Falcons training camp, so I wanted to also update everyone based on a question that I did receive that we will be covering camp on AtlantaFalcons.com. Unfortunately, we cannot show video of complete practices. We will show some highlights. We'll show all the interviews we can possibly grab, including head coach Mike Smith, Matt Ryan, all the guys vying for a spot on the team. So there will be video. There will be some highlights, maybe some mic'd up features like we did last year with Coach Smith and some of the coordinators. But unfortunately, due to rules both by Coach Smith, the coaches here, and also NFL rules, we're not able to show complete practices or anything that could, tip the hand and let other teams know what is happening. So I'm going to move on into some other questions, and thank you, fans, for those questions. Hope you enjoy our coverage coming up on AF.com. First question comes from Birds Fan VA. Who is better suited to play the slot position, skill-wise, Chevis Jackson or Chris Owens? It's a good point, good question. Going to have to see what they look like with pads on and a little bit more time in one-on-one drills with receivers. Chevis Jackson really turned out to be a prototypical nickelback guy who could go in there and really play hard, a good tackler, a bigger corner, but could still move. So I think it's going to be hard to unseat him, although he's going to be competing for a spot on the outside that was vacated by Dominique Foxworth, and also the wide open competition there with Chris Houston, just to see what corners come to the top and bubble up to see who's the best guys out there. So we'll have to wait and see. Chris Owens a little bit smaller, but very, very fast. And you see some guys do very well at that slot position in that type of build too. But I think Christopher Owens, with his speed and ball skills, he'll get a crack at the outside as well. And it'll be perhaps who is best suited to play that nickel position, because they're going to be on their field 65-70% of the time some games. So it really is crucial to have someone who fits there, not just necessarily the third guy on your depth chart. Next question comes from Frequent Flyer. When are the Falcons going to start grooming a future starting center? I do not believe there's one on the roster right now, and they have waited a long time to do this. What kind of draft pick would it take to find a quality NFL starting center? Well, obviously, that kind of changed in the past couple of days with the retirement of Jeremy Newberry, which the team did confirm today earlier before I recorded this. So there was a guy who was brought in as a veteran, not necessarily a new guy, but somebody who could provide depth at the position. Brett Romberg, another veteran who was signed, who can provide depth at center and also at the guard spots. So those, again, are veterans, just to kind of set the stage of what's going on with Todd McClure, who has started, took some notes beforehand, 134 of 136 games. Very durable, but is getting older. Great guy. Don't want to rush him out the door, and he even said that he's not planning on retiring. He's told the Atlanta Journal-Constitution that earlier this season. But if you want to start talking about younger centers, there is Ben Wilkerson on the roster, a younger guy who was a backup center last year. He's available, but I wouldn't fret right now about grooming someone. This is a process that Thomas Dimitroff and the Falcons front office has in place. And when you want to talk about draft picks that centers can come in, Todd McClure was a 7th-round draft pick, and a lot of the great centers in the league were late-round draft picks. Tom Nalen comes to mind, great center for the Denver Broncos, I believe, is also a 7th-round draft pick. So you want to really look for somebody who has the smarts to run your offense at that point, and size necessarily isn't an issue when you look at a center. It's somebody who really can make the calls along the line of scrimmage and is quick on their feet and can do some different things in blocking, because the center very rarely goes man-on-man consistently throughout a game. So don't fret just yet, Falcons fans. Let's get through this season. We'll see what's happening. There are some quality linemen on the roster to back up Todd McClure, and he's still one of the best centers in the game. Next question. Devitt3 asks, can you explain why Stephen Nicholas is working at strong slide linebacker and Mike Peterson at weak linebacker? Peterson moving from middle linebacker would seem a natural fit at strong side, run-heavy linebacker, and Nicholas his natural weak side position. Well, I took a few notes really quick about this discussion. And basically, when you look at your weak side versus strong side linebacker, first thing you have to understand about the Falcons is that, at least on the depth chart, there's no differentiation between the two. They're both outside linebackers. And a lot of teams tend to do this in certain situations. You won't have a guy who's always locked in at one position. They move around oftentimes based on matchups. So that's when some notes I put down with coverage skills, blitz sets, rolls, and sub packages. When you go to a nickel package and you have two linebackers on the field, what two linebackers work best? Maybe it's your middle linebacker and one of your outside linebackers. Maybe it's both your outside linebackers. So it's all based on situation. So I wouldn't read too much into decisions of one guy's here, one guy's here, because it can depend on a lot of different things. And if you come out to Falcons training camp, you actually see them swap sides based on who's covering the tight end in a certain position. And when you get into the regular season, you'll see pass coverage really come into play as to who is lining up on that strong side, if your linebacker is covering the tight end or if a safety is covering the tight end. So I know that really doesn't answer your question, but it kind of talks about some of the logic in these things. But in the NFL today, rule of thumb is being interchangeable, move back and forth. So I think you'll see Mike Peterson take on some strong side roles, some weak side roles. Same with Stephen Nicholas, or whoever the two starters at outside linebacker may be. Moving right along, ex-Falcons Dirty Birds ask, hey J-Mike, this offseason there was a lot of talk about moving Jamal Anderson inside to defensive tackle. Is there anything that you saw in minicamp and OTAs that indicates that they will do this in some sub-packages? And if so, will they use Lawrence Sidbury on the other side of John Abraham? Good question. I'm not going to talk too much about what I saw at minicamp or organized team activities, again, because the media does not report on what's seen at practice outside of one-on-ones and stuff like that, again, to keep competitive advantage. But Jamal Anderson ran some defensive tackle last year, has bulked up a little bit, could still do that. And a lot of guys I talked to, Steve Weish and other reporters around the NFL, really think that Jamal Anderson is best suited as a 3-4 defensive end. Now think about that situation for a moment. If you have Jamal Anderson line up at a 4-3 defensive end, and then you have some guys move around, you could have, theoretically, a 4-3 look that evolves into a 3-4 look without any sort of substitution going on. Jonathan Babineau, Jamal Anderson at the ends, maybe someone else who, one of your defensive tackles, the other, Peray Jerry, Trey Lewis, whoever that may end up being, is there at the nose tackle position. You have a linebacker, you have John Abraham drop back, who's played some linebacker as a 3-4 scheme in his career. A lot of different options with this defense, and it's really a lot of fun to speculate on what may happen. Lawrence Sidbury being a rookie, not really sure what the plans are for him. We'll have to see more during Russell Falcons training camp. Going to move on here. Divot 3 again asks, how many cornerbacks do you think will carry on the active roster this year? Out of Houston, Jackson's, Owens, Grimes, Hutchins, and Middleton, I have a hard time seeing any of them not making the roster. Thanks. Well, the season ended last year with 5 cornerbacks on the roster, and you've also got a guy like Antoine Harris, who's nicknamed Toolbox. I believe he gave himself that own nickname because he can play safety, corner. He's done both in his career. So there's interchangeable type guys who can play both positions. So that's an interesting point. If you have 5 cornerbacks that ended the year on the roster, it's not necessarily there's going to be 5 to start the next year, but that's a point for discussion. Now, take those guys that you just listed and you think, okay, somebody's going to have to go. There's other guys that weren't listed there, and you can go on AF.com and see all the cornerbacks. There's going to be some competition there and some healthy competition. Let's just say, for the sake of argument, that there are only fighting for 5 spots. So that is a positive. It may not seem like it. But when you have all those young guys fighting against each other for roster spots, they do get better, and they do get better in a hurry. Going to try to squeeze in one more. Abacot asks, have you seen any improvement of cornerback Chris Houston, and do you know if his starting job is safe? Well, no starting job is safe, according to Mike Smith, except for maybe Matt Ryan. So there's going to be open competitions across the board, but I will say that all the cornerbacks on the roster have gotten better. When you look at Brent Grimes, a guy who was a starter early on last year, got hurt, he's gotten stronger. He's a very athletic player. Chevis Jackson has gotten better. He was probably the guy that I saw the most highlight reel worthy in one-on-one drills during organized team activity. So everyone's gotten better, and everyone is going to compete to see who the best corners are. Thanks again, everyone. We'll talk to you later on when I come back with some more questions.